The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
You know, post-pandemic, with so many people working from home, when we have a holiday Monday, it just seems like it starts at noon on Thursday. You know, there's nobody on the roads around here today. I guess the Bay Bridge is going to be filled up for most of the day, and 95 and, you know, places where people are heading out of town. But going to Friendship Heights, piece of cake today, and I would imagine downtown the same thing. It's supposed to be a work day, isn't it? It's Friday, not a holiday. Monday is the holiday, but the way things work, especially, I guess, in a government town, things kind of shut down a couple of days early. And so if you're off today, enjoy it. If you're off Monday, enjoy it. And everybody gets back to work on Tuesday, such as it is, whether it's working from home or working in an office and feeling miserable and all that. But there's good feelings around town today. We'll get to the NBA and a huge change in college sports. This is a day that was coming. It's now here. The question is, how the hell is it going to work? Because whatever vestiges of amateur sports remained in college, they're completely gone now. And we will now have salary caps, it looks like, for schools. Optional salary caps, which make things kind of crazy. And I'll get to that. But we are going to have athletes paid by the schools, which is the way it should have been for many, many years. And for the last 3 years, it's been complete chaos with the NIL and the transfer portal and the way things have sort of worked. And we've got, you know, crazy stuff like quarterback suing his old school, the school he never went to, because he was promised $13.5 million and only got $150,000. It's crazy. So they gone through the process. Now the question is, how did they get their arms around all that? And we'll take a dive into that coming up in about 20 minutes. The Boston Celtics taking a 2-0 lead on the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. Indiana really blew it in Game 1. What happened last night was not unexpected, but had Indiana won, the series would have a whole different feel going to Indianapolis tomorrow night for Game 3. With what the Celtics were able to do after getting lucky in Game 1 and taking care of business last night by 16 points, feels like it's over. Now, you know, you got to be reluctant to say that because of what we've seen in previous series, like, you know, when it was declared over with Minnesota likely getting a sweep, said Charles Barkley. Okay, they did beat Denver, but it had to go 7 games for them to do it. The Knicks looked like they had taken control of the Pacers, and Indiana came back and won the last 2, including a blowout in Game 7 in New York. So you don't necessarily count them out, but on top of everything else, Therese Halliburton went out last night with what could be a hamstring injury, and whether he can get himself ready to play in Game 3 tomorrow night is going to be crucial if Indiana has any chance to get back into this series, and it does not look promising. This was Scott Van Pelt last night talking to Tim Legler in studio after watching what the Celtics were able to do to take a 2-0 series lead.
The ability of the Celtics in a game where at half they're only up 6 and we're looking at each other going, how? Yeah. And all of a sudden Siakam's going nuts in the third and you're thinking, here come the Pacers, to absorb those punches and then land knockout blows. What's it say about this Boston squad?
Yeah, you saw a talent disparity tonight, and you saw just dominance on the part of the Celtics. And this Game 2 thing is interesting for this reason. We made a lot about it, and I think justifiably so. But the difference was in both of those first 2 rounds, Scott, they won that first game comfortably. So was there a little bit psychologically of not a state of readiness for that second game? Miami makes a record number 3s, and then Cleveland wins by 24. And then they go on the road and they snuff everything out. In this one, Game 1, they really know they should have been down 0-1 going into this game. So their state of readiness was greater, and Jaylen Brown talked about it after the last game. He wasn't happy despite the win because he didn't feel like they were prepared for that style of offense. They were tonight. And after the first quarter, this was really all about the Celtics being in control. You're right, Indiana made that run and Siakam got hot. But for the most part, you never really felt that they were going to get over the hump, that Boston was going to truly be threatened in this game. They answered that run with a significant one of their own, took control from that point on. And tonight you saw a team that had offensive players that just flat out won every one-on-one in front of them. And we're going to talk about it on the touchscreen later and how they just broke Indiana down repeatedly all night long.
If I said Tatum had 32, I believe he had 23. Regardless, Boston had 126. Ultimately, that's what matters. Brown would never admit it. He's such a buttoned-up dude. He's not going to say, yeah, I was pissed off. You think he was about the All-NBA?
I think he was, and I think, look, there are All-NBA teams. There's 3 of them. There's different tiers to those. This was a first-team All-NBA performance tonight. The guy was sensational. He did it all. I mean, he made his mid-range. He made deep shots. He overwhelmed guys off the dribble with his drive. He was the guy. Really, I actually was a little concerned at one point, was this too Jaylen Brown-centric, their offense? Because that's not when the Celtics are at their best, but he was taking what was in front of him. That plate was set, and he was eating. No matter who was on him, it didn't matter. He had the look in his eye. He had it going. They rode that for a while. It's pretty much what their offense was in the first half, and then he was also the answer when Indiana made their run. Just give him credit. The guy was sensational tonight across the board in every way, including defensively with some of the pressure that he put on guys when he guarded them as well.
You all know the drill. In the immediate aftermath of a game where Tyrese Haliburton leaves with questions about his leg, do we anticipate that between now and midnight Eastern we're going to know the status for Saturday? Almost certainly not. And so we don't freak out and overreact about his status. However, his importance to this Pacers team, how do you quantify what he means to their capacity to win games against Boston?
Well, I think you even saw it in this game prior to the injury. He had a quiet night, and when he's quiet, they struggle. It's difficult for them. He's that important to them, and he can push pace and not get shots and still be effective. I just didn't think he really put his stamp on the game, and then this happens. And here's where it's unfortunate this time of the year, this round. It's interesting because the first 2 rounds, you get situations where you get multiple days off.
Sure.
When you get to this point, you're every other day.
Let's go.
And so there's a very quick turnaround. They travel, they get home. He's going to have a day, and he's going to have to get ready to play again. Who knows what this is going to look like, what it's going to mean. But if he is not himself as the motor of this team and the pressure that he puts on teams to sprint back initially and what secondary offense that leads to, they're a completely different team.
And it's a left hamstring injury, according to sources. That's what Woj tweeted out. And I believe it was 10 games that the hamstring issue cost him in January. You think of OG Anunoby, who had the hamstring issue for the Knicks in the last round against the series. And, man, you just look big picture. Look in the East. No Butler, right, for Miami in the first series. Donovan Mitchell injured. Jared Allen couldn't go for Cleveland. And now if Haliburton is injured, I mean, the path for Boston, it's going to be hard for anybody anyway, given the depth of scoring talent that the Celtics have. But what were we talking about the other day, you and I, via text, right? Your availability is an ability in a sense. It's the unfortunate reality in all sports this time of year, isn't it? It's
critical. And look, this is a team that's missing Benedict Mathurin. He'd be big in a spot like this because he's not going to be your point guard, but that's another 16, 20 points that you don't have. TJ McConnell's been as good as any backup point guard can play in the postseason. He's not Tyrese Haliburton. It's a different size component to it. Look, he'll be effective. There's no question in my mind. If he has to go and Haliburton can't, there's no doubt about that. But this one felt a little bit different in terms of what Boston allowed Indiana to do to them. And Haliburton would make a big difference. But if Boston plays as physical and as hard as they did defensively in this game and had as much attention to detail with getting back and matching up early, because that's when Indiana gets you back on your heels. If they do that again, Scott, I don't know if it's going to matter that much. This was a great disparity tonight in not just talent, but just in physical force that they played with.
That's fair.
They wanted to snuff something out tonight and not let this get to a lot of noise and anxiety heading to Indiana, in 1-1 when they know they really got away with one last.
Look, the noise was reasonable because they were lucky to win that game. They were lucky. Underline it. They were lucky to win game 1. I know you know it. I know you're still bummed out about it.
Indiana had one in their hand.
Yeah, for sure.
Out.
And you cannot afford to let that sand slip through your fingers. If TJ's got to be the guy, he's got that dog in him. I'm sure he would relish the opportunity to put more weight on the scale for him, and I'm sure he'd be ready to handle that load. They have not lost a playoff game at home. Boston hadn't lost on the road, right? Yeah. So it'll be a fascinating sort of one thing's got to give.
Yeah, and I will say one thing that was interesting in this game offensively. It was a big deal for Indiana. Miles Turner got in early foul trouble. Miles Turner never got in any kind of rhythm. If you go back to game 1 and think of how dominant he was in the first half. They didn't really have a great answer for that because Boston was continually retreating to run down toward the baseline because the ball got behind them. Here comes Miles Turner trailing into those spots where he can catch, shoot, catch, get to his mid-range, catch, and go down the lane and throw on somebody. He really never had any impact in the game at all in the first half. He had a couple of buckets early third. You're thinking he's going to get it going. It was almost too late by that time. So that's one factor to look at. Can Miles Turner have the same imprint that he had in Game 1 when they get back to Indiana in Game 3?
That'll be tomorrow night, Game 3 of the series. Does not look good for Indiana. As for Jaylen Brown, and you heard SVP and Legler say, I wonder how he feels about not being named first team All-NBA. I'll get to the economics of that in a second. But this was Jaylen Brown with the media, and he was obviously the offensive difference last night. He had 40 points, and he had 10 of those points during a run that really decided the game. It was Indiana 27-22 with 1:14 left in the first quarter, and then the Celtics went on a 20-0 run. Now, it was a 6-point game at the half, but as Legler said, there's just a talent disparity there, and it looked like whenever Boston really wanted to step on the gas, they could, and they did, and they managed to win the game by 16 points. But as for Jaylen Brown, whether he was miffed in finding out just before the game that he was not named first-team All-NBA, this was part of the news conference last night where first he discussed the 40 points that he scored and then the follow-up question and how he answered it.
Just being aggressive. Wanted to get out in transition and run, but wanted to attack their smaller guards, put pressure on them, get to the basket, get to the free throw line.
Was there any motivation for you after hearing that you didn't make an All-NBA team?
No, I wouldn't say that.
What would you say?
I mean, we 2 games from the finals, so honestly, I don't got the time to give a
I don't have the time to give an F. Here's the economics. He's playing under a 5-year Supermax deal of $286 million. So there's no reason to feel sorry for Jaylen Brown. The family's going to be fine. But by not being named first-team All-NBA, it costs him $2.2 million. But he would make that up if he makes it to the finals, and they are 2 games away from making it to the NBA Finals. So there's all that, and we'll see what Indiana's able to come up with tomorrow night. The other thing about the Celtics, and you talk about the injuries for the Pacers, Kristaps Porzingis, they are projecting he has a chance to play in Game 4. I wonder about this: if the Celtics win tomorrow night and take a 3-0 lead, are you going to bring Porzingis back for Game 4? You might, just to, play him a few minutes, and if they can close it out, he gets another rest before they start the finals. Or do you play it safe and say, well, we can close this thing out up 3-0 without him, and we'll give him another week or so to get healthy. He's got a calf injury, and that may be something that he doesn't recover from. You remember Kevin Durant in the finals a few years ago tried to play with a calf injury and tore his Achilles. So there's great danger in that as well. But I think that's going to be another tool in their belt is Porzingis. And right now they look like when they want to win, they win. They had a bad blowout loss in Game 2 of their previous series against Cleveland. But other than that, they've been able to take care of business whenever they've wanted to do it. Now, speaking of Cleveland, yesterday, J.B. Bickerstaff was fired after 5 years on the job, and they made the playoffs and had all kinds of injury issues in this last series. In losing to, they were out. Donovan Mitchell didn't play, Jared Allen didn't play, and they lost to a really good Boston team. No shame in that, and you compounded with the injuries, but. This way the NBA works, he had to go. But the intriguing part of this is, you remember LeBron attended a home playoff game for the Cavaliers after the Lakers season ended. And you got the Bronny situation. Cleveland has the number 2 pick, 20 overall pick, excuse me. Would it be possible that they have already consulted with LeBron and said, do you want to play for Bickerstaff? He says, no, get him out of here. And, maybe that's in the works. That's speculation, but, with LeBron, you never know. So, he looks at Donovan Mitchell as a second star to play alongside of. Does that work for them? I don't know. But this is the NBA we live in. It's an NBA where LeBron decides what he wants to do, how he wants to maneuver things, whether or not he wants to play with Bronny. How important is that? Can they get Bronny into the first round because you get LeBron in part of the package deal? And all kinds of things in play, and LeBron has the ability to opt out of the last year of his contract with the Lakers, which is going to pay him $53 million. But, he can go to Cleveland and he can sign another 3-year deal and, keep playing or not playing or whatever. It's just LeBron's world, and we're living in it. But Boston up 2-0, and then we've got Game 2 of the Western Conference Finals tonight as the Dallas Mavericks on the road have an opportunity maybe to take a 2-0 lead in that series. We'll get the Brian Windhorst take on the metamorphosis of Dallas coming up in the 10 o'clock hour. But next, let's take a look at what college sports looks like. A monumental decision has been made where players will be paid by the schools. It's all above board now, and we'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Charles Barkley on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday eviscerated his bosses at Turner with the contract still not settled. It's been reported it's pretty much a done deal that the NBA is going to take the package they have on Turner and turn it over to NBC, which is reportedly bidding $1 billion more for the package, but it's not over. And Turner has the right to match, and whether or not they'll do that, we have to see. But, boy, did he go to town on them, and we're going to play some of that coming up in the 10 o'clock hour. Also, take a look at where the contract is. Where we are in college sports now is where we have never been before. It's not that players haven't been paid even before the NIL. They were paid under the table and, all kinds of things that go back even as far as the Newt Rockne days when the Gipper was playing professional football under a different name on Sundays. I mean, this kind of stuff has been happening for a long time, but it's amazing how quickly things have ramped up in this. And Ross Dellinger, we're going to hear part of his conversation yesterday on the Rich Eisen Show, but points out in his column today, he did a lot of the background work on this. He's done some very good reporting on this as how things have unfolded here with this decision that was made last night. But his lead in his column is, in the spring of 2021, it's 3 years ago, attorneys for the NCAA appearing before the U.S. Supreme Court argued vehemently against providing each college athlete with additional cash annually. The amount, $5,980. So they could see this was coming down the pipe. I mean, this if you couldn't see it, you were closing your eyes. This was going to happen, what has happened in the last 3 years. But they were so convinced that they could fight this off. They went to the Supreme Court and they said, nope, we're not going to pay less than $6,000 a year per athlete. 3 years later, as Dellinger writes, in a landmark agreement that will transform the course of major college athletics, the organization left behind its archaic rules, shook off its longtime amateurism argument, and thrust the industry into an era of direct athlete compensation. The amount, more than $15 billion in new cash, is expected to funnel to athletes over the duration of a 10-year agreement. And you probably have to read this to really absorb all the legalese in it. But let me see if I can simplify it as much as possible. The NCAA has agreed. It's a settlement. They've agreed to pay more than $2.7 billion in damages over 10 years to past and current athletes. They have also agreed to a revenue sharing plan of roughly $20 million a year. So all Division I athletes dating back to 2016 are eligible to receive a share as part of the settlement. In exchange, athletes cannot sue the NCAA for other potential antitrust violations and drop their complaints in the three cases: House versus the NCAA, Hubbard versus the NCAA, and Carter versus the NCAA. Like, the NCAA knew they were going to lose all three of those, and the damages would be a lot more than $2.7 billion, so they did what they had to do. They settled it. Now, the question is, how is this money going to be distributed? How are they going to be paid out? It's going to be paid out over 10 years. So this is according to what ESPN has. A series of formulas devised by a sports economist will be used to decide how to split the money among the more than 10,000 former and current athletes. That's a lot of athletes, 10,000, but $2.7 billion is a lot of money. And the settlement provides a 10-year window to fully pay out the $2.7 billion. Each player in the class will get an annual check worth 10% of the money that they are owed. So they're not going to get a big lump sum, but it's still going to be a nice check for 10 years for what was clearly the NCAA in the wrong on this. Now, how does this work going forward now? Well, you're going to have this $20 million salary cap, it looks like, but it's optional. Schools don't have to do it. So I was thinking of this, I may be far off on this, but I'm thinking of this loophole. Maryland plays in the Big Ten. As part of the Big Ten, playing Division I football, Division I basketball, they get X amount of dollars from television every year, a lot of it from the Big Ten network. They're flush with cash from that. What prevents a school like Maryland, which is really a basketball school, you could put Duke in there, you could put Kansas in there, all the other blue blood programs, maybe even North Carolina, though they've had pretty good football teams over the years. But let's just say a school makes a decision, they go, we're really beating our head against the wall, trying to do this with football. Why don't we just not have this money paid out for football, and we'll put all of our eggs in the basketball basket. We'll have a football team that's probably going to go winless every year in the conference, but we're going to collect our TV money, and we're going to have something that people care about, basketball. We're going to put all our efforts into that. What stops them from doing that? If it's an option, if you're not going to have a salary cap floor like you have with other sports, professional sports, where there's a salary, you have to spend a certain amount of money in the NFL, NBA, NHL, same thing. You can't just throw out a team of guys making the minimum and say, yeah, this is our team, go play. You have to do that. So there's that. And as Barry Zerluga writes in his column today, it's not like the NCAA hasn't been dealing with this kind of stuff for years. He says in 1984, the Supreme Court ruled it could set its own market for television broadcasts. Remember, prior to 84, the NCAA was controlling the whole thing. So you had like one game on ABC in the afternoon and maybe one at night. Now you got 1 million football games on because you don't have the ability of the NCAA to control that anymore. In 1988, it lost its right to cap earnings for certain assistant basketball coaches. In 2014, it lost the ability to prevent former athletes from profiting off NIL. That's, I guess, the Ed O'Bannon case. Remember, Ed O'Bannon saw his name, image, and likeness on EA Sports and said, nah, this ain't right. And he went to court, sued, won. In 2021, lost the ability to prevent athletes from earning perks beyond a regular scholarship. In 2024, it was faced with losing 4 more cases, the 3 that were settled this week and another that's ongoing, so it came up with billions and billions of dollars. It has the money. But here's another point that Barry makes about this, and I think this is also interesting to look at. Let's say there's a $20 million a year cap on the football program. Let's say they come up with that. Each school has $20 million to spend on football. You're looking at Dabo Swinney. He's making $11 million a year. Just said, hey, we're not taking anybody in from the transfer portal. Well, you got to say to Dabo Swinney, well, okay, that's fine as long as you keep winning. And we can't justify taking up $11 million of the $20 million cap for your salary. So we're going to pay you $2 million. And we're going to have more money to spend on the players. How do you like that? And will there be a coach that's valuable enough that you would pay him that kind of money if you have the $20 million cap? I mean, there are just a lot of questions here. Here's Dellinger yesterday. He knew this was coming. He knew that there was going to be this settlement. But Ross Dellinger of Yahoo, who's done excellent reporting on this, he was on the Dan Patrick Show, which was guest hosted by Kirk Morrison, and was asked some of the questions that we're asking here, like How is this going to work? How is this $2.7 billion settlement going to work? How is the money going to be distributed?
The settlement right now, according to documents of sources who are knowledgeable about it, will include kind of three parts. So the first part is the back damages to athletes owed NIL payments before NIL was implemented. They're 4 years before NIL, 4 years before athletes could earn compensation from their NIL. Those athletes, around 12, 15,000 of them is the estimate, will be distributed $2.8 billion. That's the back damage and settlement to those athletes. So that's the first part of the settlement. The second part of the settlement is kind of the forward thinking part, where schools will be permitted, not required, but permitted to share revenue with athletes. We don't know exactly the specific amount, but it'll probably be around 20 to 21, $22 million a year per school can share with athletes. It's kind of like there's a salary cap that'll be put on that of around 21, 22 million. But that will fluctuate as the settlement, which is 10 years in length, goes on. So that's the second part. And then the third part is kind of a restructured NCAA, where power conferences will have more control, will be able to create their own rules and probably enforce them. There'll probably be a new enforcement arm. There'll be some changes to some other kind of granular things, scholarship limits, roster, things like that.
So we know that the money's going to be coming in, Ross. Is that what you're saying? With all of these expansion of conferences, I saw that yesterday, now that the college football playoff will now expand its viewership opportunities, not just from ESPN, but now TNT will now hold a first-round matchup, I believe 2 first-round matchups in the first couple years, and then they'll have quarterfinals, and we'll see where that goes along. But it just shows you now that college football is expanding viewership opportunities. That's more money. And now this money can now go into the pockets of the student athletes. But if I'm a volleyball player or water polo or soccer, am I entitled to what the football revenue brings in from these TV contracts? Or is this going to be something that the NCAA is still trying to figure out how to disperse these collective television contracts coming into each university?
That is a key issue.
Yes.
is how you distribute. You know, if you hit the cap, if a school hits the cap around 20, say this round number 20 million, because of the federal Title IX law, which requires higher education and in education institutions to share, to offer equal opportunity to men and women, do you have to split down the middle that 20 million? Does 10 million go to football and men's basketball, say, and then 10 million get spread out to women athletes? A lot of these women's sports, obviously, in the grand scheme of things, right, cost schools millions of dollars. They lose money. Most of this money, as you mentioned, is generated from TV contracts and ticket sales around football, in a little bit of men's basketball. So how do you do that? Do you follow the Title IX law? Are you required to follow the Title IX law? And do you split the payments? Or is there a way around this where you can give more of the money to the players whose sport generated, right? Which would be football and men's basketball. It is a key question in all of this. And so is these booster collectives. Do they continue outside of the university offering athletes money? And does that money count toward the cap? I don't think it will. So there's a way to potentially for schools to circumvent the cap by going outside with their booster collective. And there's a way to potentially circumvent Title IX by either not doing it or going outside as well. So a lot of questions still on the disbursement of the money to athletes.
Yeah, I mean, and that point he makes at the end, the Title IX situation complicates things because you got to provide equal money to the women athletes. It goes back over 50 years now, so you've got to deal with that. Do you circumvent that by money coming in from the outside? For example, and this has been talked about for years. I've had these conversations with people for many years. What happens, let's say, if Honda or Toyota looks at Georgia football and says, that's something we want to be associated with? So this will be the University of Georgia football team sponsored by Honda, and we're going to give the football program an extra $100 million. What stops them from doing that? Nothing right now, right? And there's a lot of loopholes that have to be tied up here. And, I don't think it's going to be the ruination of college sports because the golden goose is television. There's so much money coming in from television that they want to make sure that they have a product for that. And we haven't even gotten to the NCAA basketball tournament. That's still a big deal. And the deal that was made by Mark Emmert to get $1 billion from the networks to televise it, well, that's going to be chicken scratch once we get to the next contract there. But that has been very profitable for the networks. That's going to start to be more profitable for the university as well, and the players are going to share in this, revenue sharing, much like they do with the regular salary cap, just like works in the NFL, works in the NBA. As the league makes more, the players make more, and we'll have that. But the other thing that you have to consider is the transfer portal. At least in basketball and football, hockey, whatever, baseball, you have contracts, and players are tied to those teams when they have contracts. If you're going to have players who can jump all the time, and they'll do it for more money. Hey, Alabama just got a big cash infusion from General Motors. They're paying players more. Let's go over there. We don't have to sit out. So while this does seem to solve some problems, and it takes the NCAA off the hook for what would have been bigger damages had they lost these 3 lawsuits, and they were going to lose the lawsuits. And then you now have maybe some cost containment with these salary caps. There's still a lot of questions with this. And whatever sports was just 3 years ago, whereas Ross Dellinger points out, the NCAA went to the Supreme Court preventing, and were successful in preventing, college athletes to be paid less than $6,000 a year. I mean, and now who knows? Some of the reports are Caitlin Clark made over $3 million in NIL this past season at Iowa. Shedeur Sanders making close to $5 million a year at the University of Colorado. Arch Manning, who didn't take a snap or took maybe a couple of garbage time snaps at the University of Texas last season, made $2.5 million. So if they have a cap, will he make that kind of money? Well, maybe he can with some more outside money coming in, and I guess it just works the same way as it does in professional sports. LeBron James makes $50 million a year from the Lakers. He probably makes 4 times that from his endorsement. So maybe you could have that as well. But whatever the quaint notion of college sports was before, forget it. It's big business now. The players are going to be paid. They're going to be paid well. And how this all gets worked out, that's going to be the interesting thing. But we're now past the should players be paid by the school. That's done. That ship has sailed. Players are going to be paid by the university, and how college sports looks 10 years from now, God only knows. God only knows. All right, coming up in the next hour, Brian Windhorst on what has happened to the Mavs. You forget about this, but a year ago, they tanked so as not to make the play-in game and give up a draft pick, and now, a year later, they're on the cusp of getting to the NBA Finals with a player that some said, don't touch him. Windhorst will talk about that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. All right, we got Tony on this holiday Friday, and it is a holiday Friday because in this town, people don't go to work 2 days before, 3 days before holiday Monday. We might as well always have 4-day weekends the way this works out. But a lot of people off today. And Monday is the actual Memorial Day holiday, the first big beach weekend of the year. Imagine the Bay Bridge is a mess today as people try to get there for the first time for the summer. I got into a little bit of something with Ted Leonsis today. Not something serious, but a little bit of, we call this a Twitter dust-up or an X dust-up. Not anger, Ted and I, we have this sort of bristly relationship. I think we have mutual respect. I'd like to think so. but it goes back a long ways when I was with the other station, and he had just bought the Capitals. I think this was after the Caps had made it to the Stanley Cup Finals in 1998 and were swept by the Red Wings, and shortly thereafter the team was sold to Ted, and I didn't know him at all, and he called me in the office one day and said, yeah, I've been listening to your station, and we pay money to have our games on, and you never mention us. All you do is you talk about the Redskins. And I said, well, one thing, we're heading into football season now, and number two, the research tells us that's what most people are interested in. Yeah, research, you can make it say whatever you want. He was trying to bully me into saying, oh, yeah, you're right, we got to talk about the Capitals all the time. It's difficult to talk about hockey because, I admittedly, I don't know the game as well as I should, but I also don't think you can talk about scoring chances the way you do in particular plays. And also, look at the television numbers. The NHL playoffs have been averaging about 1 million viewers per game. May tickle up a little bit in the Stanley Cup Finals, but they're not going over 3 million people. The NFL, I mean, you got games, 50 million people watching these games. A regular season game draws high in the teens for 1 o'clock, and the window at 4 o'clock often goes over 30 million. I mean, it's apples and oranges. So he put something out that he felt that he needed to point out how well the women's basketball team, the Mystics, are drawing. Mystics, by the way, 0-5 with a loss last night at Phoenix. Elena Deladon not playing this season. I don't know whether I don't think she's announced her retirement. She's just sitting out the season for the Mystics. So they're not as good as they have been. 5 years ago they won the championship, but they're not going to do it. And so he put out a tweet that said, it's from the Washington Business Journal, which he retweeted. And it was a quote that Ted had in an interview with them. And he said, there's probably greater demand than we have availability for, said Alison McCauley, the Mystics chief business officer. Can the team accommodate booming interest in the WNBA while playing in one of the league's smallest arenas? Meaning the arena downtown, the one that's on the former site of St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Southeast D.C. So Ted retweeted that with the quote from the chief business officer of the Mystics, and he said, best of both worlds. We can coexist with the Mystics and the WNBA boom times, practice at a state-of-the-art facility, then play games at the Entertainment and Sports Arena in Congress Heights and Capital One Arena, which we shall do. And they shall do that when Caitlin Clark comes to town. I don't know. I think there may be one other game that they're going to play there. But this is what Ted was trying to sell us in that ill-fated attempt to move the teams to Northern Virginia. Remember that? How he got up at that news conference, didn't take any questions, but gave himself this congratulatory speech about how he made this deal with the governor and they were going to build a Potomac Yard. And D.C. really isn't D.C. It stretches all the way to Orlando and like New York and National Airport. Hey, that's in Virginia. It's Washington's airport, but it's in Virginia. So this is all going to be great. And we're not abandoning Capital One Arena. No. We're going to play the Mystics games there. And then the city of Washington goes, oh, really? Well, we spent 90% of the cost, like $60 million, to build you this arena in Southeast. And you're going to abandon that and just put your games at Capital One Arena? Really? And so I snarkily tweeted back, we'll see how many seats you fill at Capital One with a winless team that isn't playing a team with Caitlin Clark. And then he corrected my spelling of Caitlin, which was correct. I spelled it with a L-Y-N. It's spelled L-I-N, Caitlin Clark. So I got that, touche on the spelling. But, this self-congratulations about how he's done with his 0-5 Mystics team and how it's boosted. Women's sports have been boosted. There is no question about it. But it's been boosted in a big way by Caitlin Clark. The WNBA went to another level this year because of her. And she's struggling. She's scoring some points, but her team isn't winning. Team is bad. And when she's playing against the competition that she's playing against now, not like, playing Nebraska, it's a little different. I think she's going to be a really good player. Is she going to be the best player in the league? I don't know. Diana Taurasi is the best player I ever saw. She's still at it. She's in her late 30s, had 20 points against the Mystics last night. And so, when Ted jumps on this, hey, the boom of women's sports, and we were on this, my family was on this, and we got the best of both worlds because, we got a great practice facility down there in Southeast, and we have the ability to play at Capital One Arena. Well, how many games are you playing at Capital One Arena without Caitlin Clark? Not many. And, if your CEO is worried about attendance, yeah, you can move people in there. But how many other games are going to sell out at the 4,000-seat arena in Southeast? Probably not that many. Now, look, I'm not down on women's sports. My daughter played sports. I got a granddaughter. I think she's probably going to play sports. That's the way it is. But let's not jump to pat yourself on the back for a boom that comes from a particular woman who's going to be at your arena, I think only once. I have to look at the schedule, but I don't think Indiana's there more than twice. So all these games that your CEO is worried about moving because of demand, there's demand for one game. Understood. Beyond that, not sure. All right, Dallas Mavericks attempting tonight to go up 2 games to none in the Western Conference Finals, as they were able to take care of business on the road in Game 1 at Minnesota. And, for all of the Anthony Edwards comparisons to Michael Jordan, he has shot, I believe, 12 for 40 in his last 2 games. They won Game 7 at Denver, but they lost Game 1 at home. He did not put the team on its back. The big shocker about these Dallas Mavericks is what they have gotten from someone who has been, a pariah in sports in the past. And it's a team that, remember, last year they had an opportunity to make it into the play-in, and they chose to tank because making it to the play-in meant they would have had to sacrifice a draft pick. And, you don't get that many opportunities to compete in the postseason. And to kick one away to keep a draft pick seemed, well, it was controversial for sure. So this is Brian Windhorst, who was on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, talking about the Dallas Mavericks, what has happened since last year, particularly with the new player that we're seeing who doesn't resemble the old player in Kyrie Irving, and what he has meant to the Mavericks. Windhorst yesterday on the McAfee show.
Well, Luka was not down with them tanking at the end of last year. They tanked to avoid the playoffs to keep their draft pick, and Luka did not like that. And they ended up getting them this young center they've got, Derek Lively, who is excellent and perfect alongside him. And Luka has amended his position on that. I can't believe the Kyrie that I'm seeing right now. So, I started covering Kyrie when he came in the league in 2011. I was there not every day, but virtually every day when he was in his 3 years with LeBron. And he was not down with sort of being the LeBron co-star. I'm not saying that there weren't individual nights or individual moments where they were down together. And obviously they won a title together, and that was huge, the highest moment of his career. But he wasn't down for it. And then he went to Boston, and he didn't like that grouping. And then he went and got his handpicked, not sidekick, but his handpicked co-star, his handpicked other franchise player in Kevin Durant. And that didn't work out for various reasons. At the end of the day, Durant pulled the plug on that before Kyrie could pull the plug. So for me to believe that this was going to work out with Luka Doncic after seeing all of those situations where he was in pretty awesome situations and it went sideways, and maybe not all his fault, but largely due to him, how could I possibly have expected that this was going to work? And so now, as I watch them play, and more importantly, as I listen to Kyrie talk and I listen to Luka talk, Kyrie is genuinely, as far as I can tell, truly invested in Luka's success. He's truly gotten to a spot where he wants to do things that make Luka better. And I would love the real of how LeBron and Kevin Durant feel about seeing this Kyrie Irving. Now, granted, when he was with LeBron, he was 24, 25. I can't compare that. And he's 32 now. And even when he was first got to Brooklyn, he was 29. He is just than a different guy. And so last night is a perfect example of this. Last night, they come into the game. The Mavericks game plan is, all right, Luka is battling this knee. He looked a little bit tired at some of the end of these Oklahoma City Thunder series games. We're going to try to give him a little bit of a less of a workload at the beginning of the game, and we're going to try to save him for the fourth quarter. And so Kyrie comes in there. Also, jittery building last night, all right? Western Conference Finals haven't been played in Minnesota in 20 years. Like when they, on the pregame warm-ups, right, they're going through their normal routine with all the fireworks, whatever, the smoke. And as soon as they put Western Conference Finals on the scoreboard, the crowd like even gasped because the crowd was like pinching themselves like, oh my God, I can't believe that Chuck and Kenny and Shaq are here in the building. I can't believe it says Western Conference Finals on that scoreboard. Everybody was a little bit on edge, and Kyrie was like, don't worry. And he took the ball, and he's like, listen, I'm going to go to work here. I'm going to calm everybody down, all right? And he scored like 19 points in the first quarter. I mean, Minnesota was actually hitting shots then. He calms everybody down. And then in the fourth quarter, at the agreed-upon time, when now it's going to be Luka time, Kyrie stands back and goes, Luka, go for it. And when the game ends, yeah, he gets to dance a little bit on Ant Edwards because, he went back at him with game, but he played a beautiful team-first, Luka-centric game plan in a road Western Conference Finals game. And it was amazing to watch. And I have to say, I got to take my hat off to him. I'm skeptical that it will last forever.
Well, it only has to last 5 more wins for the Dallas Mavericks. No, let's see, 7 more wins. Excuse me. They have to win 3 more in this series, and then I think they're going to face the Celtics. It doesn't look good for the Indiana Pacers with Halliburton nursing what could be a hamstring injury, and they're down 0-2. But you never know. They're going back to Indianapolis tomorrow night. And by the way, if you're not paying as much attention to these playoffs as you have in the past, they're now every other night. In previous series, you got longer breaks. Now it's alternate nights, West, East. Tonight it's the Western turn and playing at Minnesota. And hearing Windhorse, hearing about Kyrie Irving calming down the team, it's almost like Norman Dale and Hoosiers, Pee Wee, get on his shoulders and measure the basket. This is not the same guy that we have watched. We have heard him described, Kyrie Irving, as the worst teammate in the history of professional sports. People have said that. I've heard Michael Wilbon say that. And Wilbon has to concede like other people, like, whoa, wait a minute. Who is this guy? This guy is ceding to another star. He wasn't happy. When he won his championship in Cleveland, Windhorst didn't mention this, but when he won the championship in 2016 with LeBron, it was LeBron making the big block, but Irving hit the big shot. His basket was the one that won the game, that won Game 7 on the road, the first team to do that since the Bullets had won the championship on the road in Seattle in 1978. And so when he did it in 2016, his basket won it, and I guess he wasn't happy about the narrative being, well, LeBron came back to Cleveland and took care of unfinished business and delivered the title. Hey, what about me? It's my team. No. And so he goes to Brooklyn with Kevin Durant, as Windhorst discussed. Let's win there together. Let's be the guys there. That didn't work out. Now he's in Dallas, and he looks at Luka, and instead of saying, I'm going to be the star and Luka's going to be the secondary, no. He knows Luka's the star. And when Luka is being double-teamed and so forth in the first half, he's doing his thing, scoring 20 points. And between the two of them, they had 63 points, which is by the way, seems to be a magic number. Not that it was close last night with the Boston Celtics, but their 2 big guns had a total of 63 points, with Jaylen Brown scoring his 40 points, which ties a career high. Brown maybe a little bit upset that he didn't make first-team All-NBA, that could have had something to do with it. And let's see, how many shots did he take? Yeah, he only took 27 shots. He was 14 of 27 and 8 from 11 from the line. And Tatum had 23. So between the two of them, you had 63, just as you had between Irving and Luka. 63 points in their Game 1 win the other night. And tonight we got Game 2 of the series. The good thing, I guess, is that Game 4 will start at 8 o'clock instead of 8:30 on Sunday. A little bit better, a little bit more rest. Coming up, Charles Barkley on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday discussing the deal that looks like it's going to leave Turner and is going to wind up on NBC and might lead to the dissolution of that Hall of Fame pre- and post-game show Inside the NBA, which Charles Barkley and Shaq and Kenny have made so incredibly popular over the years. But Barkley holding nothing back, even though the deal's not done, even though the NBA hasn't officially left Turner, what he has to say about his bosses as he talked to Dan Patrick, that's next on the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
You know, back in the heyday of Larry King, when he was doing his show on CNN, and there was even a time when he was doing CNN television and the radio show, which really made Larry King nationally known. He started that on Mutual in 1978 and did that into the 80s and then went to CNN, and I guess his popularity went up even more from that. But Larry King used to say the ultimate guest was Frank Sinatra. He said, you can't do any better than Frank Sinatra as a guest. I would think in this era, sports anyway, the sports arena, you can't do better than Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley is the best guest. He's just funny all the time. He's got a great sense of who he is, and he doesn't care what he says. And what he said yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show, most people wouldn't be able to get away with in their jobs, but they're not going to touch him. He took his bosses to task for the way things are right now in terms of the contract at Turner. But after he talked about that, and we're gonna play that, he just kind of meandered into this. This, again, Barkley yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show.
When I interviewed for a couple jobs, for a general manager, I wanted complete control.
Wait. Hold on. When's the last time you interviewed for a front office?
I've interviewed for 3 front office jobs in the last, it's been probably about 5 to 7 years, but I wanted complete control because I know, because as a general manager or president of basketball operations, you get to fire like 4 guys before people realize you're the problem. I do. I think being the president or the GM is the best job in there, because you're the one who picking the players and you're the one who making trades. But I think you get to scapegoat at least 3, more likely 4 coaches, because people never say who put this crappy ass team together. It's easier to fire the coach, and you get to hide out behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So that's like when I interview for those jobs, I'm like, yeah, this is a job I want, because I got great job security before people realize, like, wait, you're the head coach. You get away with murder. You get to make all these bad trades and all these bad decisions. But if you fire the coach, the kind of shot clock like starts on you again. So that's the best job in sports, being a GM in the NBA or president of basketball operations.
What were the teams that you interviewed with?
I'd rather not say that because I don't want people to know I was talking about coaches behind their back, to be honest with you.
Okay. What about if somebody said right now to you, do you want
It's probably too late for me now.
Okay.
It's probably too late because I want to do that in my 50s. I just turned 61, so I probably wouldn't do it now, to be honest with you. Well, I might not have a job. So
I know, that's what I'm saying. You got a lot of free time perhaps coming up.
Hey, you know what, Dan? I love you, Dan. You know, when I put my resume on LinkedIn the other day, they called me back and says, "You've never had a real job." Why? I said,
you don't have a resume.
I don't. That's what I said when I put my stuff on LinkedIn the other day. They're like, "Have you ever had like a real job?" I said, "Nope."
Wait. When you're growing up, did you work like at Dairy Queen or Pizza Hut or any of those places?
No, I'm in a small town, Dan, a couple thousand people. There's no Dairy Queen and all that stuff in Leeds, Alabama. I've never, that's what's really funny. And I'm lucky and blessed. I want to make that clear. I've actually never had a real job, Dan. Can you believe that?
Good for you. Good for you.
Lucky. Hey, I'm lucky.
Charles Barkley as a GM. You got to be kidding me. You see Charles Barkley scouting in some small college gym, some hidden gem, making trips over to Europe to see players. Now, I could see him, maybe he's like a face of a franchise, somebody who spreads goodwill and that sort of stuff. But that was that was never going to fly. Plus, it's really a 12-month-a-year job. Now, he's got the greatest job in the world. Most of the season, he's going in once a week. Hangs out, doesn't prepare anything. They do the NCAA tournament. You don't know any of the players. He's just Charles. So that wouldn't have flown. This is what was the news-making part of the interview yesterday, and that was about where they are in whether or not Turner's going to hang on to the NBA rights. It's possible, it seems likely, because it's been reported widely that NBC is going to get the rights, and Turner will have one more year. That'll be a lame duck year next year. They don't want to announce anything now, and they really don't have to go much longer because they're done after the Western Conference Finals. So it's possible that could be early next week. It could be a 2-0 lead for Dallas tonight. It could go 7, but the reality is by the end of next week he's done, and so nothing's going to happen in the next 10 days or so. But this is Barkley talking about where things stand now with the rights for Turner kind of twisting in the wind.
Morale sucks, plain and simple. I just feel so bad for the people I work with, Dan. These people have families, and I just really feel bad for them right now. These people I work with, they've screwed this thing up clearly. And we don't have zero idea what's going to happen. I don't feel good, I'm not going to lie, especially when they came out yesterday and said we bought college football. I was like, well, damn, they could have used that money to buy the NBA.
Yeah, it says TNT Sports added college football playoff games in a 5-year deal, their licensing deal with ESPN. Maybe that's why they're buying this, because they don't, the money they were going to use on the NBA, they got to do something with.
Yeah, that's the first thing came to my mind. We've never had college football, never been involved with college football. And I'm like, wait a minute, shouldn't we be spending every dime we got to keep the NBA? So morale sucks, to be honest with you, Dan.
I was wondering about this. I don't know if you guys have talked about this, but you and Shaq and Kenny and Ernie, how about just form a production company and continue to do the Inside the NBA, hire the personnel, keep the personnel there, continue to do it in Atlanta, and then you're able to sell that to NBC or Amazon and say, here, you already got the best studio show ready to go, keep everybody in place, but you guys own your own production company.
Well, I've talked to the guys about everybody signing with my production company, because I have my own production company. And I would love to do that if we lose it. But I have definitely actually somebody suggested that to me, to be honest with you, on the internet. So why don't Charles Barkley sign these 4 guys total, his production company, and sell it? I'm like, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
But like I say, we're just sitting back waiting on these people to figure out what they're going to do. My 2 favorite wines are Ingle Nook and Opus. And these clowns I work for, they've turned us into Ripple and Boone's Farm and Thunderbird. Like, we got the best studio show. And it's so funny, we just won the best studio show, but these fools turned us from Ingle Nook and Opus into damn Boone's Farm and Ripple. It's crazy.
You're actually angry.
I am. Dan, it's so interesting. I've been spending a lot of time with the crew lately. They've been with these guys where I spent time with they bring their newborns in, they bring their kids in, they'd come in like when they were in high school, and now they're graduating for college. I mean, that's how long, Ernie's been there 32 years, Kenny's been there 27, I've been there 24, but think about that. Some of these people I work with, they brought their newborns in to say hello to us. They brought them in high school when they graduated, and now they've already graduated from college. So, yeah, I'm angry at people who, they're part of my family, to be honest with you. So, and I feel bad for those guys.
Yeah, but how did you guys screw it up? How did TNT mess this up?
Well, I think the first thing is they came out and said we didn't need the NBA. So I think that probably pissed Adam off. I don't know that, but I'm saying like, because when we merged, that's the first thing our boss said, we don't need the NBA. Well, he don't need it, but the rest of the people, me, Kenny, Shaq, and Ernie, and the people who work there, we need it. So it just sucks right now. And the thing that's interesting, me, Kenny, and Ernie talk about it, and Shaq all the time. Like, people walk up to me, I'm not even joking, 20 times a day. I'm like, dude, thank you for the kind words, but I have zero idea what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like, you can't go anywhere. And then what's really frustrating, we all are getting sent like 5-7 articles a day about we've already lost it, or we on life support. TNT's trying a fourth quarter comeback. And I don't know, Bill Simmons, who I'm a big Bill Simmons fan, they're sending us articles like they've already lost it. It's over with. I was listening to Mad Dog Russo the other day. He's like, oh, the deal's over with. It's already going to NBC. So I don't know what to believe. So it sucks for the people, for all of us.
So where is the deal? What is happening? Why has there been no announcement yet? Is it possible that Turner will match the NBC bid and keep it? Who knows? Michael McCarthy works for Front Office Sports. He came on later in the show with Dan to try and shed a little bit more light on where things stand at the moment.
The game is about on the 10-yard line now. It's certainly heading in the direction of NBC and Amazon picking up the rights while ESPN keeps the package. On the other hand, TNT still has matching rights, and there hasn't been an official offer to match yet. So we're still kind of in a waiting stage. I don't think it's going to happen this week, certainly before Memorial Day, but it is close. But as they say, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So we're not there yet.
I was wondering, and I brought this up to Charles, could they just start their own production company and continue to shoot the NBA and have it in Atlanta? Everybody stays there. Have the crew that stays, and then you outsource that to NBC.
Dan, I love that idea. I mean, get creative. We're at a time right now where the talent is flexing and going independent, following the model set by yourself years ago, and more recently by Pat McAfee and Stephen A. with his own production company. So I think it's a fantastic idea. As a matter of fact, the first time I heard the idea was from your own producer, Paul, who tweeted it out weeks ago. So I think if, Sir Charles does this, your show should get a finder's fee, Dan.
Okay, so this hasn't been finalized yet, but I'm looking at the bigger picture with the NBA. We're going to have an $80 million a year player by the year 2030. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, by projections, will top out at $81 million in his final year. How is this sustainable with players making 60, 70, 80 million? And how long will it be before we have a $100 million player?
I think it's sustainable because you've got these big streaming companies coming in. Everybody's looking at them, Dan, as these sugar daddies who are going to pay for these, huge media rights that maybe the traditional broadcasters can't afford anymore. The NBA is a global league, so it gets global media rights. I mean, one of the things that people don't realize about Amazon is Amazon's already in business with the NBA. They've got the NBA in Brazil. So they have a relationship that goes back years. So I think people are trying to bet on these big streamers as the future sugar daddies of the sport.
If Charles Barkley becomes a free agent, finish that sentence.
Most expensive, most sought after free agent in sports television history. And I'd love to see his LinkedIn profile, Dan, because it should say that the funniest, most entertaining analyst in history. By the way, it was a great interview. Charles was off the hook, and everybody would go after him. ESPN has been lusting after the Chuckster for 20 years. Amazon would back up the Brinks truck. NBC, everybody would want him.
I wonder, though, how his style, what he says, his opinions would play on ESPN ABC, since they've had a lot of turmoil at ESPN with people saying things, not being politically correct, or going against company policy here.
Yeah, I think Jimmy Pitaro is loosening the reins there, Dan. I mean, when I look at some of the things that McAfee gets away with, I can't believe it. I mean, he took a shot at Norby. You know Norby. He was one of those powerful guys in sports for 40 years. He took him down on ESPN's own air. So I think, they welcomed Charles with open arms. Even Stephen A. said on his show last night, he does not want to see inside the NBA go off the air. It's just too good.
That's Michael McCarthy, Front Office Sports with Dan Patrick. So things are not quite settled, but they're moving in the direction of that. And I think what Dan is talking about there makes all the sense in the world. It is like the McAfee show. The reports are that ESPN pays Pat McAfee $15 million a year to produce that show. He gets paid. All the people that work on his show get paid. He was reportedly paying Aaron Rodgers $1 million a year to show up on his show. So that could be the way it works, and that would make a whole lot of sense. Stephen A., by the way, on the pregame show last night, said he hopes this Celtics Pacers series wraps up quickly because he's getting tired and needs some rest. Well, you want to be the ever-ready buddy. You want to make $12 million. You want to make $20 million. You got to work sometime. Sorry, the NBA playoffs are taking up too much of your time that you want to hit the beach there. One other crazy broadcast story, and that's Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen was very, very generous in his praise of Tom Brady. He knew the score. He knew whenever Brady was ready to move in to the number one spot that he would move over. And, Brady's the greatest of all time, and I understand that. But, well, the last 2 years, he's won an Emmy as the top network analyst. And so now here's Brady, who's never done a single game, who's going to step in and take his place. Olsen understood it. He understood the terms of the deal, but now it's going to be reality. And Tom Brady, who has done exactly 0 NFL games, is going to be the number one analyst on Fox next year. What happens to Greg Olsen? Well, Greg Olsen has to take a $7 million pay cut, according to reports, to become part of the B team on Fox, where he will work with Joe Davis. Joe Davis does the Dodgers games on TV. He's the guy that replaced Vin Scully. So that's going to be the B team with Olsen. And who's going to be the Super Bowl analyst? Who's going to do all the primetime games? Who's going to do all the big games? Oh, yeah, it's Tom Brady, the GOAT. So Olsen, I'm sure, has a clause in his contract where he can get out. The problem is, where's he going to go? He's not going to bump Troy Aikman on ESPN. He is not going to bump Tony Romo on CBS, though a lot of people would like that to happen now, as Romo has really seemingly receded since he signed that enormous contract. But they're paying him $17 million a year. They're not going to eat that money, so he's not going. Chris Collinsworth, maybe at NBC, maybe that's a possibility. Would they bump him aside to work, have Olsen work with Mike Tirico? Maybe. And then you got Kirk Herbstreit at Amazon. Is that a bigger deal? Is the Thursday night game with Al Michaels bigger than being the B team on Fox? It might be, because it's a standalone game, but it's also streaming. It's not on network TV. And yesterday, Olsen was on a podcast hosted by Owen Poindexter from Front Office Sports, and he says, my aspirations are still to be a number one analyst, whether it's Fox or elsewhere. That will never change as long as I do this. I'm just not content to be there. I'm not just happy to have a seat. I want the top seat. I want whatever that opportunity allows, and I will never stop working for that. I feel more motivated now than ever. Life is sometimes out of your control. Would I love to continue to be calling that team? Of course. Who wouldn't? But again, my respect for Tom and what he's accomplished and what he's done obviously speaks for itself. Yes, on the field, not in the broadcast booth. He hasn't won back-to-back Emmys. He said, I'd be lying if I said, I love that guy calling the Super Bowl this year. I think everybody would. My hunger, my approach, my aspirations, if anything, have just gotten stronger. So you watch what happens. There's going to be criticism of Brady early on. And here's Olsen sitting with the B team, doing a 1 o'clock game in Carolina where, you got Tom Brady doing the Eagles and the Cowboys at 4 o'clock. A little bit different deal. And we're gonna find out how that works out for Fox. I think, here's my feeling, I think it's in the best interest of Fox to get Olsen someplace else. Because it'd be like, you bench Tom Brady for somebody else and Brady had just won the Super Bowl. Like, yeah, okay, he's your Super Bowl quarterback, but he's not going to play. We have somebody else. And maybe it's not apples to apples, but I think there's danger for Fox in having Olsen still in the company where he has been praised for his work, and you're going to have, as great as Brady may ultimately become, someone who's going to go through growing pains. Enough broadcast stuff. I got to get to a story that blows my mind. Anyway, enjoy the holiday weekend. I will be back. It will be a holiday, but I will be back on Monday. Tony is coming up next. And again, see you Monday morning, 9 a.m.